What's up guys, and welcome to Nomifactory. Last time we completed most of the first page of the quest book, which included getting our steelworks up and running, and producing our first primitive circuits. Ready to move on to the next chapter and start building our first powered machines. Let's start off by taking a moment to talk about how power works in Gregtech, for anyone that hasn't seen the mod before. We have a steam dynamo at the moment, and we're going to provide that some water with this pressurized fluid conduit and this infinite water source. Now, when we put fuel in this, and it has enough water, it will produce 40 RF a tick at this basic output level. Now, Gregtech machines can't accept this RF per tick, which means we actually need an energy converter, which we made last episode. Now, RF converts to EU, which is Gregtech's energy, at a 4:1 ratio. So 4 RF is 1 volt of EU. So our small steam dynamo with no upgrades can provide 10 EU, which is just barely enough to run a machine like a wire mill, which at its lowest possible voltage takes 7 EU per tick. You might have noticed that I mentioned that it was a volt of EU for every 4 RF. Gregtech has 2 different measures of power, I suppose is one way to put it. As well as voltage, there's also amperage. And the way I've always thought of amperage is as a package of power moving down an energy conduit into a machine. So each machine will take 1 amp to run. Some machines later on will take more than 1 amp or accept more than 1 amp, but we'll get to that later. And our energy converter can, if it has enough power, output up to 4 amps of LV power, which is 32 volts, or 512 RF a tick, which is 128 volts, or 4 packets of 32 volts. Now this allows you to run 4 machines simultaneously. So while we're about to start making low voltage machines, later on in the pack we'll start to encounter higher voltage machines such as this medium voltage machine. This has a higher voltage requirement, which means that you need to provide energy in a different way. So with a medium voltage transformer, for example, which can turn each of those 32 volt packages, those 32 volt amps that our low voltage converter can produce, and it can take 4 of those and convert them into 1 package of 128 volts, which is medium voltage. Or with the power converters that we're going to be using, we can just convert straight from 2048 RF into 4 amps of 128 EU. Now, if you provide a Gregtech machine with not enough power, so if you provide a medium voltage machine with low voltage power, it won't operate. But if you provide a machine with too much power, so you provide a low voltage machine with an amp of medium voltage power, the machine will explode. And no doubt at some point in this playthrough, I will blow up a machine. I manage it every time I play a Gregtech pack. Now the wires that we use to connect power to the machines also have a voltage and an amperage. In this case, this LV superconductor wire, the conductive iron wire, can contain 1 amp of 32 volts. Now what we can do is we can craft these together to make a 2x conductive iron wire, which can carry 2 amps of 32 volts, or even a 4x conductive iron wire, which can carry 4 amps, and even higher, all the way up to 16 amps. If you provide too much power to a wire, so you connect a medium voltage power source to a low voltage wire, the wire will burn out and be destroyed. And that's all we really need to cover for right now, but we'll come back and explain some intricacies of the system later. Now that we have a small amount of RF being produced by this dynamo, I'm going to leave some space so that we have room to expand this. And we will place our transformer. Now you notice that all the sides look the same except for one. This is the output side. Sorry, this isn't a transformer, it's a converter. This output side is where we attach Gregtech cables, and we will get Gregtech power from. And then any of the other sides can accept power from our power source. I actually need to make a few more cables. Now, we also have a battery buffer, and this is a 4 amp battery buffer. Although it can take higher amperage in, it will only output at 4 amps. And we can put this here, and once again, all the sides are the same, apart from this one output side. When you place Gregtech wires without clicking on a face, they will place down as just individual blocks. And we can just use a pair of wire cutters to connect them together and to connect them to machines. We connect this converter to our power source. You see it starts to fill up a small buffer inside of it. This battery buffer doesn't have any batteries in it yet, so it doesn't have any sort of a buffer. But we can put 4 LV batteries into here, and that will allow us to store power so that we can run more than one machine at once, as long as we don't do it consistently and the batteries have charge. And later on we'll provide enough power to this converter that it will be able to produce 4 amps of power all the time. We can, however, already use this battery buffer to start charging up some basic stuff. And it will charge most RF devices, so we can charge our flux capacitor and our flux magnet in here. Now, our first powered machine we're going to craft is the wire mill. Now, at the moment, it's costing us 2 ingots to make every wire. But once we build the wire mill, we will get 2 wires from every ingot. So it's a much better ratio. And we can also make fine wires, which in the case of copper wires can be used in several of the recipes, and you can get 4 fine wires from 1 normal wire. So it massively reduces the cost of some things. Now, to make this, we'll need 2 of our small circuits, a machine hole, 2 tin cables, and 4 electric motors. And we'll be using a lot of these motors, and we will batch craft some, but we're going to make the wire mill first so that we can make these considerably cheaper. And there is our wire mill. Does this need to have a battery in it before it will output? I guess it does. So now, rather than it costing us 16 ingots to make 16 fine copper wires, it actually only costs us 2 ingots now in a little bit of time. This is the first step in making our recipes much cheaper, and this will happen a lot throughout the pack. We'll struggle to make something the first couple of times, and then we'll unlock an easier way of making it for the future. So what I'll do quickly right now is I'll make up a bunch of those motors, because we're going to need a lot. They're used in a lot of the machines. Hopefully all of these will keep me going just a little while. So next up, I think I'm going to go for the bending machine, so that will halve the cost of all of our plates. Before we can make the bending machine, we need to first make some pistons. And each of these costs a wrought iron gear, 2 tin cables, 2 wrought iron rods, and 3 wrought iron plates. And there is 2 electric pistons. So now we can make the bending machine. Now this halves the costs for things like steel ingots. Well, this does require one of these program circuits. So these are used in a bunch of recipes with a bunch of different numbers to signify which recipe you want to complete. I believe plates are a 0. And maybe plates are a 1. Yeah, there we go. They were 0 in interactions. Next up, we're going to make this basic alloy smelter. This lets us not only make steel easier, but now we don't need to crush up ingots to make things like red alloy and conductive iron. And this is some 4x copper cables, 2 circuits, a machine hole, and 2 tin cables. I think actually the only thing I'm missing is these 2. There is our 4x cables. And there we go. And there's our alloy smelter. Now, as the quest just suggested, when we want to make steel, we don't need coke coal anymore. We can just use coal dust or charcoal dust. And soon we'll be able to make carbon dust, which we can make from a bunch of different things. Now, I am very much working my way up to this quest right here, because this will help us with our power generation. So in order to get there, we are also going to need an autoclave, which requires an extractor. It requires LV pumps. Now these are another components that are crafted from motors, plus some extras. And we will need some rubber rings, a tin rotor, and some screws, as well as a bronze fluid pipe to make this. There is 2 electric pumps. There we go. We need 1 for the autoclave and 1 for the extractor. And there's our basic extractor. And our basic autoclave. Next up is getting pulsating dust, which comes from smelting uraninite dust, which we just get from the ore. And then next up is pulsating iron, which is just iron and pulsating dust in an alloy smelter. And we can put the pulsating iron through a wire mill and craft it with some conduit binder. And we get our first item conduits. Next up we can put our extractor and our autoclave down. Extract a pulsating iron. And put that over a diamond. And that gives us pulsating crystals. Now that we have this snad, this is very much like sand, except for anything that's grown on it will grow faster whenever it's given a redstone pulse. So we will use this redstone clock to pulse the snad, and to grow sugarcane very quickly. It grows much faster when it's being pulsed by the redstone clock. And here's our automated sugarcane farm. The way this works is the observer at the top notices when the sugarcane grows up in front of it and the block changes in front of it, which activates the piston because of these redstone conduits. And then this vacuum hopper collects all of the drops. Now this steam dynamo can actually burn these sugarcane for fuel. I am of course one short, because why wouldn't I be? What we will actually do is we will put a drawer in here. This extract on reds, and this insert on red. And then the same over here. Extract on red, and insert on red. And then we can take this charcoal out of here, and now use the sugarcanes as fuel. And we will just throw the void upgrade in here to stop this from overflowing and then sugarcane from going everywhere. And that is fully automated power. Okay, now with 2 extra steam dynamos, I'll just pop these here and here. And we can take these upgrades I've just made, one of which is a boiler conversion. We'll put in here. And now this will just produce steam, not any power on its own. And then we can pump the steam into both of these. And in both of these, they can have a turbine conversion. And now we're actually providing 320 RF a tick with 3 of these instead of 40 with 1. And you can just put the power conduits back on. And while we still can't quite provide 4 amps of low voltage power with this setup, it does mean that we can run probably 2, maybe even 3 machines without it stalling out. There's a few quests left over from yesterday on the first chapter. And a couple of these we won't be completing. This one's just to recharge the scanner. This one's a repeatable quest that gives us travel cakes between the overworld and the void world. I might use the void world for some stuff later on in the pack, but I'm not too worried about it at the moment. And we are already in Lost Cities, so there's not really any reason to complete this quest. I'll do it for completion's sake at one point, but I don't have any way to get the skulls at the moment because we're on peaceful. Now seems like the perfect time to complete the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 quests that we can do. And with that, that is all the quests I can complete on the first page of the quest book done. And we can just throw this in here. And now it's easy for us to put stuff away from our inventory. And with that, I think I'm going to call it here for today's episode. We've got quite a lot done. We've got a bunch of LV machines finished, and we've done the whole of the first page of the quest book. We've also done a bunch of work on our automated power. We'll improve that even more in the next episode. Thank you all for watching, and hopefully I'll see you again next time. Bye!